Hello YouTube, this is Black Thought, where I ramble podcast style about a city of Final Fantasy Opera Omnia topic. Gameplay takes a back seat, feel free to tab out while I screw around in game. The topic for today is the content for the month of January 2021. Weird to say that because I'm recording in December, but I will be doing an overview with my perspective, having played this period in the Japanese version, highlighting some gotchas, outlining my pull plans, and everything and anything in between. Before I continue, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, share this video around, and drop a comment about your plans. Only 30% of my viewers on average are subscribed. I am dangerously close to 2,000 subscribers, trying to hit that for the end of the year. I think I'm like 10 off at this point, so maybe when this video releases, I'll be at the point. Anywho, I'll be interacting with all the comments, so do not hesitate to ask any questions. I also do monthly JP retrospectives on content right after it finishes. Well, I'm a little behind on those right now, but I try to do those and see how I feel about content and my initial takes that I like going back to when it rolls around in Global. I'm going to link that as well so you can see how I felt about it and how my opinions have possibly evolved since then. A bit of a prelude before I go into upcoming content. Something I've been noticing really is there's a bit of a content blindness for the months of content up until maybe Paladin Cecil. From what I can feel around social media and Discord, it seems like people are only have their blinders on Paladin Cecil as a super hyped up unit, and people don't quite know what to pull on in these upcoming months. I see a lot of who are the meta units or who are the next broken units, and I think it's due to a bit of availability bias. People see someone in a lot of videos and they hyper focus on them. They don't see unit spam constantly in YouTube videos and they assume they quote unquote fall off, which is never the case. As I always say, YouTube is such a small fraction of the community, and just because you don't see something on YouTube does not mean that they are not viable, that they can't keep kicking along in content, whatever. It's one of the reasons why I joined YouTube in the first place, so I could put my own runs out there so people can shut up because they don't quote unquote hear a lot of things or don't see them used or don't hear someone talked about, because in reality all they're saying is I don't see this on YouTube or Discord, which again, can't stress this enough, is such a small sample size that conclusions should not be reached based on these things. These takes get proven wrong weekly, all the time, throughout content. People are doing insane runs that did not appear on JP YouTube, and yet these misconceptions still persist. They still continue to happen, and it's moderately frustrating, but it is what it is. Every character this month is solid and can last long. Even if I'm not a fan personally, and if I'm not pulling, I'm going to make the case for everybody giving their pros and cons. You shouldn't be asking, who should I pull? You should be asking more, who do I need to diversify my roster? Think about it from that perspective. Anywho, ignore the hive mind. That's really what I want to say. Lufenia is still quite restrictive, and you're likely just going to keep pulling in cases where where you can't get through content. That's what a lot of JP players do normally. That's why we don't have insane stashes like some of the global players. Well, some of them do. But content is just as restrictive. It's just not as tight of a damage race. But Lufenia orbs are still hilariously specific, and that's just how the game's going to be. I predict a little more pushback once people don't pull, once Lightning Burst can't carry them through content. It's always been like that. Synergy bias is very real. People didn't notice it on the Tyrant raid just because Lightning carried it so hard, but if you ran it without Lightning, it was incredibly restrictive. It's important to understand the game and how things work and what's going on. This is also the start of the one character a month content cycles. Sad, but now we're moving on to boss rushes and dimensions and transcendence, taking the spots of a new character. This is all right. I don't mind this change because it seemed a bit bad at first because again this was the COVID rerun period in JP and it felt like the new characters were so slow. But by releasing less characters, and it also is not the first time that they've released less characters within the game's lifespan, it allows them to upgrade other characters faster. So now that they can make more unique kits for different characters, and characters that haven't gotten touched in a while have a better chance of getting updated just because there's less of a pool to update the game with, right? All right, let's keep going. First, we have the Scorpion raid, aka Cloud's LD and Burst event. His rework is very nice. He gets multiple dumps on Cross Slash with a Brave Gain with refund at the end. think I'm saying that right. Finishing touch works the same way. It does an attack, and then it keeps dumping HP, and after each brave attack, and then it does a refund finally on the last one. And finishing touch also has splash damage now, which means that when Cloud uses finishing touch on one target, he will leave the other launchable, which enables a lot more launch shenanigans. His call ability is also finishing touch. Still, did I say 50% splash on finishing touch? I think it's 20. Anyways, whoops. Finishing touch on his call works the same way. It leaves both it launches one and leaves the other one launch elbow. And his burst is a big brave damage up when you are critting, which is pretty normal in this game. Critting is pretty hard to not do. And Cloud has that crit modifier inherent in his kit somewhere. His LD is a 2-turn AoE delay. It's one HP attack. I can't talk today. One take. 1 HP attack, although with LD boards it's going to get a double dump, but that's about 2 months in the future, so don't worry about that now. Also, the rest of the characters, Rem, Waka, Celes, not saying her name right, Yuri, and Setzer all are getting 80 and calls plus boards. Rem is a healing call. Waka is a self-buff call, which is actually very good for units who are about to use their burst. It's just a big stat up for inside the burst phase. Celes is an AoE taunt, which is great for tanks and Camelot, possibly. Yuri, I don't remember, and I'm not going to bother looking it up. Didn't put it in my notes. And Setzer is a pocket freeze joker, which is awesome. Very clutch in the right situation. Setzer, Yuri, Celes are all getting boards. Rem and Waka have them already, along with Cloud's new Lufenia armor, of which the term I am not familiar with, and I still haven't figured it out in either version. He gets the DPS armor because he is primarily a damage dealer, and he breaks his cap to get big damage. If you're investing in him, definitely get it. The Lufenia, it is a stun orb again. They are immune to HP silence, but everything else is cake this time. Meaning you can Eldnarsh it if you really want to, but who likes using Eldnarsh? I'm sorry, Final Fantasy XI fans, Eldnarsh is boring. Immune to HP silence means sorry, Kefka and Arciela, but you're not going to choose this one like you did with Cam's Lufenia. At thresholds that are unfamiliar to me, and that will be figured out when the boss gets here, they get Warrior of Light shields, just brave damage shields, and they're kind of fat, so you need to blow them up. I believe there's a dispel somewhere in this fight that I never quite figured out, but when they turn, I think it's they raise their tail. I haven't done a lot of research on this fight because I want to give you a brief overview of what to expect without rambling too long, but I believe they turn red at some point and they need to skip a turn. So the idea is to delay them with Cloud's LD and do damage to you can finishing touch to cut down their shields and EX and LD, and then you want to stun them, and then they will power down. It's kind of similar to the mechanic in tier 18. Do they get buffs at all? Because Cloud can dispel them too. If you don't have Cloud's World of Illusions weapon, his 15 CP Crimson Edge from the weapon token chop, that's pretty much required for Cloud. You're kind of tripping if you don't have that. So cut down their shields, stun them at appropriate intervals. This isn't a chaos. This Lufenia isn't super restrictive as long as you can, like Edward, the normal suspects, Raijin, Camelot's good here. JP side, and I actually recorded this one. This is when I was getting back into the habit of recording on my JP account. But I ran Rude, Camelot, and Cloud for double stuns, heals, and attack down. It was pretty fun. Bosses were doing ones. Camelot, although Yoshi Pasta used Camelot and Rude's Lufenia to my surprise. So, I mean, shout out to him. But I'm getting off topic now. Here, I'm planning on running Karen, Warrior Light, and Cloud. They can't kill me if they can't hit me. So, single Cloud stuns, but that really should be more than enough. I expect a lot of creativity here revolving around stun units again. I think this is what people thought Reno's Lufenia was, but the bias of bringing Lightning and Lightning being the best option and not having other good damage dealers really clouded people's judgment. So this fight should be fine. It's a raid, so but just triple Cloud and co-op will make things go fast. If you're running Cloud and co-op, please burst in the beginning so everyone can do damage and go down faster. Just don't spam finishing touch because no one likes sitting in launch animations. The challenge, if you have Cloud, you should be fine. I can't really think of anything. really challenging here per se. Everyone's 80, and a lot of these characters are popular, so just bring whoever, as long as you have Cloud. You can probably do it without Cloud, honestly, since there's 6 options. Sets is probably a good idea. I remember JP side, I ran a 0 to 3 Celes, 1 out of 3 Yuri, and Cloud. I had Cloud BT, but I probably didn't need it. Now I'm gonna run 0 to 3 Rem, my 1 out of 3 Yuri, and Cloud BT when I grab it. Speaking of Cloud BT, for my pulls, I should say, I'm going straight to Burst Pity. I don't plan on pulling any of the other banners outside of the freebies that they give, and I also don't feel like waiting. I'm pulling on the Celes banner because I don't have her EX, and it'd be good to pick up because I do plan on getting her LD when it rolls around. If I get a dupe on the freebies later banners, then whatever, I don't care. That's just tokens for later. Something a bit different I'm doing now for these videos is I'm gonna try to speak on specific fights. I added this to my notes at the last second, so it's not too well ironed out. Expect me to flesh it out a bit more next month. But Cloud is going to be great in the future for launch fights, for stun orbs and delay orbs. He's got a ton of utility. When his LD boards come back, he's a pocket delay and he's already a pocket launcher. So there's incredible value in just having Cloud. He's really just a Swiss Army knife for a lot of content. He's also one of the units because now he's more launch oriented with all his free skills. Oh, I forgot to mention his LD gives wow, how did I forget something so big? I guess I took it for granted. His LD gives a free skill after use, and you want to use that on finishing touch. So he's primarily a launcher now. The cross slash is just secondary, but setting up the free, because you get more cross slashes, setting up that free finishing touch means you get a lot more guaranteed paralyzes, which is just good for Cloud. He's just got an insane amount of utility. Great character. Poster boy, although Sephiroth is a poster boy, and we saw how they did him, but Cloud's actually good. What else? Oh, big warning to content creators. Cloud's burst music always gets hit when he's in burst. So if you're going to use his burst in a video, mute it immediately when you burst, and you unmute it when you get out of burst, or else you're just going to get hit with copyright strike or demonetization. He's part of the Square Enix airline. Shout out to VL. He's getting up there in subscribers. Dispel Orbs, which is upcoming. He's very good for that as well because he only dispels 1 buff. Definitely get his armor. Again, he's my favorite character next to Zac and Yuna. They're all my trifecta of favorites. Well, I don't know. Okay, let me stop tripping. Zac and Cloud are tied, and the Yuna's a recent favorite, but it'd be like that. I'm super hype. Going straight to Pity if I need to. Hopefully I don't have to, but it is what it is. Beatrix Lost Chapter. Beatrix is getting level 80, rework, and an LD. Her rework gives her a splash on Thunder Slash, her skill 2, is it? I don't remember which order her skills are. And you get another extra skill 1, which is Saint's Cloth, and it gets another hit. So she already has a hard time running out of abilities with her skill recovery on EX. Yeah, that's right. And now she has an LD as well and an extra skill 1. She's just never going to run out of skills. You pretty much spam Thunder Slash with her just infinitely. Her call is does her S1 skill 1 Saint's Cloth. It buffs the party if she is purpled, and I think she is actually the first call ability we're getting where that applies buffs if you have buff start. So if she has buff start, she'll come in and apply the buffs to the party, and then the actual call applies them anyways. But let's say if you do have her EX maxed, then it will apply. I think it's the Saints. Whatever her skill 1 buff, it'll apply that as well because that's on her buff start. Blah blah blah. Just more benefits if you max your characters and your calls. You know what I mean. And the LD, it makes her a dispeller. Her LD dispels all buffs on use, and it gives the party HP regen for 12 turns. The debuff it applies to the enemies is a sat plus attack down, and whenever Beatrix attacks someone with this debuff, I think it's called Rose of May or something, it'll trigger up a follow-up after Beatrix attacks. She does a Brave gain, dispels 1 buff, does some Brave hits, HP attack, and the resulting battery to the party is based on how much damage she does. Vanille is also getting her character boards. We're closing in on the last amount of character boards that are coming to the entire cast, besides Lost Chapter people, I should say. The Elufenia is a Dispel Orb. The orb goes up by 10 when a single buff is dispelled. It's immune to HP silence, heavy dark resist, so Leon and Shintoto are going to suffer a bit here. That's a pretty nasty fight. I'd put it in the same league as the 3 crazy Lufenias we had this past month. Beatrix gets a bad rep on this fight for not being the best, and I tend to agree because the bosses buff themselves with 6 buffs at one time. And if you use Beatrix's LD to get her debuff back up so she can follow up and subsequently debuff, then if all their buffs are cleared at the same time, that makes it hard to maintain the orb. Because if they don't, you're really in the hands of the AI at that point. I think Cloud is a much better choice with his World of Illusions. And again, Max's World of Illusions weapon, Crimson Edge in the weapon shop if you don't have it already. It's almost pretty much required for Cloud at this point. I think the game assumes you have it. He dispels 1 buff at a time, which is much more manageable. And I think all the people who dispel, I mean, Beatrix is still good for it. These bosses do a giant double tap AoE, and actually, this AoE is actually so strong that it can kill Bosch. Yeah, it double taps, and it drops your HP so far. Ugh, it hits hard. If you don't deal with that, maybe like Pyramid or something, or some extreme form of HP mitigation, you'll probably just die. That's it's not fun. JP side, when I did this fight, I ran Beatrix, Cloud, and Reno. I think I actually recorded this too, and I was able to run it offline with Beatrix, Cloud, and Camelot as well. Attack down stacking is fun. Geo side, I should say, I think I'll run Cloud, Reno, and Warrior Light. See how that goes. Warrior Light shields get torn apart. Maybe I'll run Kieran. We'll see. For the challenge, Cloud destroys it. Shouldn't be too bad, provided you have him and others with EX. JP side, I did Cloud Burst with a Vanille 1 out of 3, and I did have LD Beatrix, but spoiler alert, I'm not planning to pull on her. I do have her EX though, so maybe I'll purple her, but I won't get her LD. I might do that just to kind of coast with the challenge quest if it gets more difficult. Pulls. Let's see. Like I said, I'm skipping Beatrix. I actually didn't really use her at all outside of Synergy. I didn't like how she feels. I think, honestly, she's kind of mediocre. I don't know if that's a hot take or not. A lot of my buddies who I talked to about Beatrix don't have great feelings on her as well. Just out of Synergy, her damage isn't great. She has that Dispel utility, but the amount of times we need a Dispel actually isn't that much. She takes up a lot of buff slots. She's locked to the Thunder element, but she doesn't imperil it at all. And honestly, she just feels a little clunky to me. Having the Paladin's protection can be nice in certain scenarios, but I just had a really hard time justifying bringing her on the team. She has great utility, great HP regen, solid damage, solid auras, all that good stuff, and party battery with her LD follow-up. It's just I'm just not really feeling her kit. I never really felt like she was necessary for anything. If anything, she's just good on Dispel orbs. So now going into my opinion on her in the future. Really, the only time I could feel like pulling her out was Dispel orbs, but don't let my dislike of her kit convince people that she's worthless. I don't think she's that great. I wouldn't advise anyone to pull on her, but if you're interested in Beatrix, super go for it. She's plenty viable. Like I always say, I love seeing people's creative runs, seeing how things work that I can't think of because I'm not that great of a player. Plenty other better players out there than me. She's plenty viable. Thunder orbs, buff orbs like Diablos. Well, Diablos has a weird element absorb condition, so not quite, but HP regen orbs and Dispel orbs are really where she'll shine. Other just attack down stacking, or whether you need to stay alive, Beatrix will be good as well. Her Lufenia armor is the Brave Gain armor, which is still a 5% gain. Hold off on that unless you really like her. It's going to get reworked down the line, so her batteries don't start sucking, but yeah, you could probably hold off on getting her armor if you're interested in her. And again, good luck on the Lufenia. I know I'll be needing it. Bring a Cloud friend. If you have Cloud's Burst, put him up as a friend because he'll be very, very helpful for this fight. Honestly, all the fights in the cycle. But yeah, that's Beatrix. Xande character event. It's not Sandy. It's not Xande. It's not Xand. It is officially pronounced Xande. I learned this the hard way, and now you have to too. He's a new character. He is the only Dark Enchanter in the game at this moment. He's similar to Kuja, that he's an offensive enchanter, but he's far more selfish and damage oriented than Kuja. In fact, I believe the only thing he does for the party is enchant. No attack aura, no nothing else, but he does allow them to deal weakness damage. He does earth and fire damage as well. He's got big splash, slow build up, final villain vibes. He gets faster. His recast increases as the battle progresses and his stacks increase. Like, I think it's every stack of his EX, his recast goes up by 10%. So he starts off with a really slow EX. But nearing the end of the battle, he's casting his EX, I think, almost every other turn. And don't quote me on that. I'm not too familiar with this kit. Just giving the overview per usual. He gets increased splash damage on one of his stacks. I think it's crit damage. At stack 4 of his overhead is when the party enchant starts. So yeah, he's really a build-up character. It's an interesting concept, and he's got other goodies as well. Also on this event, Zell is getting his his character boards, and we know for a fact now that he is going to be the LD on Xande's Lost Chapter. I'm not going to go too much into his skills because I'm not really familiar with them, but he's a damage dealer. All I know is don't use the skill 2 until his overhead is at, I think it's at 4 stacks or 5 stacks, but once you get the splash damage up buff and it changes from Quake to Quagga, I think it is, and that's when you want to start using skill 2. Otherwise, just build up your stacks with skill 1. Okay, anyways, the Lufenia. I have really bad memories with this Lufenia. It's super restrictive. The orb is deal dark damage, and it's deal dark damage in a similar vein to Ultimate Bahamut in that you need constant dark damage. And this boss is pretty nasty. Now, the other similarity to Bahamut is that Xande makes it effortless, because once he's enchanting, any damage, it's just a damage. You just need to do damage and kill the boss and deal with the mechanics. Without him, it gets a little tricky. You need to keep the orb up long enough to push them past thresholds. And if you don't have a consistent dark dealer, let's say you don't have Vivi, and I'll go into Vivi a bit later, if you don't have Xande, and maybe you're relying on Realm only with her 8 sketch summons, which is a huge limitation for Realm. You need to out damage and get past these HP thresholds fast, or else you're just gonna die to the orb. Trying to page my memory here. I think they do, yeah, that's right, they do 50k Warrior of Light HP shields. That's very nasty. And it's an HP shield, like Warrior Light's LD. So if you do HP damage that is below the shield value, it'll just be 0. No HP damage until you lower that shield, and that's very, very annoying. They have a huge Brave plus HP that hurts. They have single target Brave plus HPs that hurt too, and that's why Beatrix is synergy here, because her Paladin's protection will prevent you from just getting blown up. Also, the defense up, attack down that Beatrix gives, blah blah. I think they buffed themselves too at some point, so the dispel is handy. They have big weakness damage modifiers, I believe, and that's to sell Xande, because his hits on his skill 2, I believe, aren't very hard. That's one of the biggest complaints I've heard from people, that in the build-up. They have a phase where they turn red, and they can delay you, I think, too. Vivi will be a godsend here for the damage check and maintaining the Dark Orb, because he can just go ham and knock them below the threshold, and he'll provide enough dark damage. I don't know how his follow-up will interact with it, but it'll be good to see, and you can pace yourself with probably 1 Vivi LD in the beginning of the fight and 2 near the end, just to make sure that they die. You're going to want Diablo Summon and a Xande friend, especially if it's getting really tight. Or if you have Cloud's Burst or Lightning's Burst, for example, you can destroy them within that. You might not even need a Xande friend. Again, Realm is going to show her limitations again, and this is what I talked about way back in my Realm is not the prize video, where Realm, while she can fit element orbs, you need to really maximize. And Realm's more like a pocket example, but she won't carry you through it with just her dark damage. You need more. You need strategy if you're going to use Realm for this. But again, if you do pull Xande, please put him up as a friend. You will be doing a service to everyone. There was something else I wanted to mention, but I can't think of it, so I'm just going to keep going. I think I'm going to be able to run Warrior Light, Karen, and Vivi. I might swap Karen for Cloud, maybe, so I can use his burst again. But I like the Warrior Light Karen combo, and Vivi will get steroided up by their battery and their attack auras and regen auras and the like. Is that it for the fight? Yeah, they got the Warrior Light shields are really the nastiest part. Xande's a good character. For the challenge, I don't quite remember any difficulty, but again, I had Beatrix LD and Cloud LD, and a 0-3 Ico in JP. Here in Global, I'm going to run a 0/3 Ico, a potentially 0/3 Beatrix, but if I get stuck here, I'm just going to purple her because I have enough ingots laying around, and Burst Cloud, but hopefully Burst Cloud is enough to carry me through this. Now getting on to polls and my analysis, future review. God, yeah, this section's rough. I'm ironing out when the next video comes around. I'm going to skip Xande. I was going to pull him because I like the concept behind his kit, and I hate this Lufenia. It took me days to do this with my Rome, Garnet, and Beatrix team and JP, and there's a video along that I tried to follow, and I had such a hard time, and it was really down to the wire. Not a fun time. It's really hard without him. But the Vivi curveball means I can probably get through this without pulling on Xande. He's a great character. His slow build-up is a downside, but near the tail end of battles, he can really wreck with huge damage, especially if he's enabled via Brave damage up and other stuff. And bringing in Enchanter, who's also in the DPS slot, is actually pretty solid roll coverage. Future usefulness, he's going to be helpful in the upcoming boss rush and the Divine Alexander. Lufenia, just not 9's Lost Chapter because his fire damage gets countered. He brings earth damage, which is good for guys, Lufenia. Fire damage, which is good for Transcendence 2. And AoE damage orbs. There's probably some stuff I'm forgetting, but he actually has a lot of coverage, and he's filling the damage dealer role. So he's actually pretty easy to build around. Vivi doesn't exactly replace him. Xande does not kill your team. Xande has more consistent damage, where Vivi kind of works at a tempo, and you gotta... Vivi's team building is a bit limited. You need to account for his damage, whereas Xande, you just plop him in a team with probably other non-elemental damage dealers as support characters, and you got a good team. Really, their only similarity is dark AoE damage, and what Xande has over Vivi as well is that he has consistent AoE Brave Shave, whereas Vivi really only has AoE Brave Shave on his EX, LD, and LD follow-up. If you're doing fire, you're doing focus, or you're doing double fire, then Vivi isn't a consistent AoE shaver, which proved problematic in stuff like Rude's Lufenia. His armor is DPS armor, must-have if you're planning on running him. Am I forgetting anything else for this fight? I don't think so. Alright, yeah, let's keep going. Now we have the rare mission dungeon where Firion is getting his LD, rework, and burst. I believe this is the last mission dungeon to date. Yeah, I don't think so. Let's go over Firion's details real quick. Skill 1 has party heals and splash damage with a double dump. I think it's a double or triple, I don't know. Well, he does more damage. And the party heal is the big thing, along with the not capping on his brave because of the multiple dumps. He loses his HP condition on his aura, so if his HP drops, you won't be losing on the I-Brave and M-Brave auras. His skill 2 is also party heals and a double dump, but it's still single target. His call ability is his skill 1, again, in burst heals, and it has an M-Brave and attack up effect. It's decent. And his LD, the meat, is transforming Firion into a trap character. It is a debuff that applies attack down, and after the enemy acts, he does a brave gain into a ranged HP attack that heals everyone. He gets a better HP attack with party refund on his LD. He gets a 60% attack aura to the party, and he starts with his generic buffs like Squall and Kuja, I think, do. The crux of Firion's updates are that he becomes a party healer on pretty much everything except his EX and HP attack, I believe, but pretty much you won't be using that HP attack because his skills, he has so many skills and his EX recharges so fast. There's really no need to really ever use his HP attack unless you need someone to be safe. But he's a consistent party healer now, and he has slightly an aura bot, and he does off-turn damage. Firion is so good in the off-turns, and he stacks so well with characters like Rude, who convert his, because now he heals the party, so that means Firion's going to have fat batteries on everything. His trap attack heals the party as well, so he's going to be battering them on the off-turns on that. That's why part of the reason that Rude was so hyped is because of his combination with Firion, especially on boss rush content. Firion is one of the best boss rush characters still to date. He's still great in boss rush. That doesn't mean he's great outside of it, but you really want the enemies to take turns when Firion is in the party. And it's kind of weird that Firion doesn't seem to be getting a lot of hype when one of the biggest reasons that Firion is hyped is because of how well he works with Rude. But it is what it is. His burst effect is a big regen for the party, and you get overflow, and it's refund after the attacks. As party refund after you do an attack, so it's also very good for boss rush as well for the off turns, because not only are you healing and battering in the off turns, that refund is going to be even fatter. Also on this event, you're getting Golbez and Ferris boards. This is the non-Lost Chapter characters to get boards, which is setting the prelude for LD boards, which are starting next month. This is a mission dungeon. They have a bunch of wacky color requirements. Who else is on the banner? Fujin, Irvine, Lena. Yeah, so Fujin, Irvine, Lena, and then Firion LD is one banner, and then Golbez, Ferris, and Firion EX are on the other banner. I think it's pretty good banners. Now let's go into the Lufenia. The Lufenia is the Agrius bosses, but I don't think they buff much. I don't recall, because there's no really dispeller here, so that shouldn't be a big deal. When they float, though, they gain a humongous amount of brave. They aren't as aggressive as in, say, tier 12 or Agrius Lost Chapter, I believe. And the orb is to do a burst AoE. Well, that's not true. It's just to do a burst heal. The orb goes up by 1 for every unit that's healed with a burst heal. HP regen does not count. So let's say it's a selfish heal. Gladio C65, for example. That'll +1 the orb. But say it's a burst heal like Firion's Trap. Any button Rude presses, any skill Rude presses, I should say. Aerith skill 1, it's healing 3 people at once, so that would be +3 to the orb. Firion obviously carries this pretty hard, since he heals on the party on every move except for his EX and HP attacks, and then he does it in the off turns too. So that healing off turn trap would be great. Rude, Gao, Dash, they all have AoE heals. So there's a lot of options for the stage, and I think it's pretty fun messing around with healers and interacting with Firion. HP regen again does not work. Let's see, they also do massive AoE attacks that you need to watch out for, but after they attack, the idea is that Firion's gonna, for one, debuff their attack so they won't hit you as hard, and 2, he's gonna use his trap and AoE heal afterwards. So the orb is actually pretty easy to manage, and in Bosch I think collapsed this fight because there's a bunch of AoEs. And I think I ran I ran Bosch, Firion, and Rude JP side, but I didn't record it. But there was so much healing in the off turns, and then the healing getting converted to battery, that I kind of just derped through it. So I don't think this fight is fairly challenging. It'll be fun to mess around. I'm curious to see how people are gonna do things. I know Belial's gonna run Realm Sylph again, definitely, because he's a goofball. Lots of room for creativity. The challenge quest, I don't remember exactly if there is a challenge quest, actually, because of the mission dungeon format. I know you get a burst token, and there was a weird bug where if you claimed the burst token because it's in a chest in the mission dungeon, if you claimed it, then and you were capped, because we were capped due to the COVID reruns around this time, then it would actually disappear. I remember saying that they fixed a bug where burst tokens didn't go straight to the inbox if they're in a chest or something, but we'll see if that is actually the case. Hope it is. If you're capped, just watch out for that. Let's get into, and if there is a challenge, I'm going to be running Firion, Lena, and Irvine probably, because I have them all maxed, and there would be just some healing shenanigans with Firion. Let's see, polls and future analysis. Firion's a 2-week synergy, and he's really great. I'd suggest everyone pull for him, because he's just a boss rush staple. And again, I can't emphasize this enough, he's good without being in boss rush. He's a different style of play character, but I think he's incredibly satisfying to use. If you do get his burst, that burst finisher is so satisfying. They nailed the animation. They nailed it. His costume's also great, although I'm not going to shill for buying for costume, but I might cop. I'm going to be pulling on the Golbez and Ferris banners, because I don't have Ferris' EX and I need Golbez dupes. I think I have every one of his weapons at 2 limit breaks, so getting dupes there would be fantastic. Talking about the future, Firion again is good in boss rush. He's really good in boss rush. Like, he shines there. It's night and day. I almost always bring Firion to my boss rush, except for the recent one, because he's, at this point, he hasn't been touched in JP. He hasn't gotten his LD boards, which are probably going to be fantastic. But even then, I know people have still used Firion to this day. Tight orbs that he can increase with off-turn damage is the same for any counter or trap characters, say like elements, Lufenias, such as Xande, who will still be up at this point. Let's see, what's it called, Bahamut, and Guy's Lufenia in the future. If Firion is enchanted, this is like how all trap characters work. Traps increase the orb on the off-turn. Very good for that. Attack down stacking, because his trap debuff is 30% attack down. He's just a hybrid, and he can cover party heals, and he has 60% attack aura. I think he has 40% M Brave and I Brave, so he fits in so many teams. You don't really have to think about building around him. His abuse with Rude is insane, because then that turns him into a super battery, and you can just battery through entire fights. It's probably why they started increasing Brave gain reduction going forward. And again, boss rush god. It's insane. If the enemy's taking a lot of turns, Firion will tear them apart. He gets support armor, which is don't really need it. he's not really going to be hitting the cap anyways. 5% attack, extra aura is okay, I guess, but I wouldn't recommend grabbing this unless you plan on running him a lot. And the last thing about this event I want to say is you want to farm a crap ton of Ferris spheres. Ferris has a bootleg, very minor sap, but for sap orbs, if you bring an E slot character and you slap the Ferris sphere in there, you can actually cheese past it just by having Ferris sphere around. So yeah, pretty good to know. Exdeath Lost Chapter. He's not getting a rework, but he is getting an LD and character boards and level 80. I'm not super familiar with Exdeath, so double check here, wait for the infographic, you know what the deal is. His LD, he gets a new HP poison debuff, and he gets free skill after LD. He can spam skills more freely because of this, because that's what, 8 extra, I think he has 4 uses of his LD, so that means 8 extra skills while he's in the party, and he's doing more damage again in the off turns because of his double HP poison. I don't know exactly what the debuff is, so yeah, wait for the infographic. He gets a ton of attack up on his limit breaks as well, and his brave gains / shave are based on attack, I believe, so he's doing a lot more. It's a great upgrade. His call ability is his skill 2, and he shaves brave and applies his debuffs as expected. No one else gets anything on this Lost Chapter. That's how it's going to be for a bit, because everyone else has character boards besides the featured character. Getting right into his Lufenia details, again, a bit of a yikes in this period. I don't remember much, but it's a sap / poison orb. So when I mentioned before that if you haven't farmed a lot of Ferris spheres, this is the perfect time to go back to the mission dungeon co-op and do that, because if you have a character with an E slot, you can cheese past this by just putting it on them. Charlotta's good. Shantoto's good here. Who else has a sap? Gabrant, I believe. There's a lot of options. No pun intended, because I just brought up Charlotta. Breaking them is very bad when they turn yellow. That's the same. They carry it over from the Chaos. Warrior of Light and Firion are synergy here, and they both have Eye Brave auras. So Warrior of Light shields, if you crank them up enough, can actually dirt past the shields again, because they don't go past HP damage reduction. So he'll be like with 60k shields again. That was probably the meta team for the stage, if I remember correctly. Warrior Light, Firion, and someone else. I think Warrior Light, Firion, Exdeath probably annihilates the stage. But yeah, Sap Orb is a is a very flexible combo. I remember I used, was it Exdeath? No, I didn't use that. I didn't pull him in JP, but I regret it because he's gonna get a burst eventually. I don't know why I didn't do that. That was dumb. I used Charlotta for the sap, and I used 8 because they do a giant brave gain and they get very hard to shave, but it's dodgeable. So 8 completely invalidates this fight, and this is why 8's one of those glass cannon characters. Where he works extremely well, and this is one of those cases. Gladio can do the same role, but 8's evasion is up the entire battle, and he has an easier time keeping up the taunt, whereas Gladio doesn't have his counter up all the time, and you need to time it more carefully. But I used Charlotta for the orb and the overflow auras, and the HP damage up. Warrior Light for the shields to prevent, because they do AoEs on top of the single target nukes, and Warrior Light, Charlotta 8. Yeah, why did that take so long to say? Anyways, Bosch might be good here as well, but I don't think I remember seeing him. I think the turns are actually a little tight on this Lost Chapter. So again, don't quote me on this. Just giving you guys a heads up. I don't remember why I don't remember anything about this fight. If you aren't prepared for the nukes, however, it's a bad time. Exdeath with his attack down and his other debuffs and his EX debuff that just negates whatever attack they do, he just kind of laughs it off. And again, Warrior Light synergy and Firion means steroid shield, and you probably won't see any HP attacks because you'll have like 80k shield at that point. I might do Warrior Light and Kieran again, maybe because I plan on pulling Exdeath, as I'll go into later, but that might be a fun combo. Just don't break them and laugh off any HP damage they throw at you. The challenge, Warrior Light and Firion are synergy, like I said, so they can pretty much carry any garbage. I remember I ran a 0-3 Gilgamesh as the third, but it won't really make it. As long as you have Warrior Light Firion, you probably just win the challenge. Pulls and future content-wise, I'm pulling Exdeath. He looks fun. He's new to me. I've never used him entirely at all in the game. He's also a good boss rush character because he's got the double HP poison and the off-turn damage, and he's going to be synergy for the upcoming boss rush, which I'll elaborate on later. And he's going to get a burst eventually, so I'd rather not double dip if there's a banner that I want someone on the other one, but he's also a featured LD. Don't want to avoid that. I have the resources now. Just pull. And he might be the next burst in JP, which might produce some panic pulls. So I'm already committing to pulling on this banner just for that reason. Sap orbs are his specialty, and debuff orbs. So like Trey's Lost Chapter, and I think it was the 4th boss rush that required, no, it was the 3rd that required a sap. And I need to talk about Brave Gain Reduction. Now there is a notion that Exdeath gets killed off by Brave Gain Reduction, and like I always say, double check your sources. This is not true. It's hyperbole from people who said the initial take was Exdeath is hurt by Brave Gain Reduction. And you know who else is hurt by Brave Gain Reduction? The entire roster, okay? Any batteries, they don't get killed by it, they just aren't as effective. Kais got hit by it too, and Kais is still doing content just fine. Rude got hit by it, and he doesn't fall off because his battery is reduced. It's not as strong. You can still pump Exdeath with attack up. He has yet to get LD boards, like I said, so of course you're not going to see, he's a what? Exdeath, as we're getting him now in global, is the same as he is in JP at the moment. So if you expect units to last that long to be consistently run and people to not get bored of them and use more recent toys, I don't know what to tell you. But again, if you see someone saying Brave Gain Reduction kills Exdeath, they're wrong. It's just wrong. It's not true, okay? It's hyperbole. These guys, I just can't stand it, man. Brave Gain Reduction is seriously just such a boogeyman. Just like Brave Reduction was, and I know people were like, oh, Brave Gain Reduction is going to kill so many units, and it did. You guys have lived through it. Identify the hyperbole for what it is. Disregard people who pump it out without double checking their sources. And again, don't base opinions on viability on YouTube videos. It's availability bias. He's really good on the Medusa Lufenia, one of the worst upcoming fights probably in the game's history. Again, really close to the last 3 Lufenia that we got. He's a great character. He works because just of his ignoring, because he doesn't do brave hits, so he works pretty much anywhere. Again, build around him, and he's great. He has debuff armor, which is again great for stacking. If you invest in Exdeath, you should probably pick this up. It'd be a great boost for him. Boss Rush. This is a new event format. This is taking the place of what used to be the 2nd character of the month. We do have 1 character a month. It is what it is. Dark Knight Cecil is the featured one here. He's getting a rework and an LD along 80. Darkness Plus gets more. It's really just his plus skills getting upgraded. Darkness Plus gets more hits and overflow. Valiant Blow is getting more hits and splash, which leaves the other target launchable, the one that was not launched, similar to how Cloud's Finishing Touch also has splash. Now, his LD is a double dump HP attack that delays all the targets. He drops a Dark Imperial generic and a new debuff, which is sap and 20% HP damage up, which is huge. It's an instant turn, and so similar to his playstyle in Dissidia 012. Shout out to that game, great stuff. He gets an instant turn. He drops his HP by 60 to put him in the threshold to get his plus skills right off the bat, and then you can set up a launch right after. So delay right at the launch, wombo combo. It's great. It's a single target Brave Shade, but it delays all targets. It's very, very good. He gets M-Brave and attack up on his limit breaks, which means he's even more of a nuke. I really like his LD and rework because it increases his risky playstyle of just blowing himself up and doing crazy damage at the cost of his health. His call ability launches. Sadly, it is not the plus version because he gets called in at full HP, so it's just a single target. I think it's 4-hit launch attack, so it doesn't splash. Doesn't make the other one launchable. A bit disappointing, but it is what it is. When he gets his LD boards, he's going to be a monster, I'm sure, with that debuff. Now for the Lufenia, well, should I say Boss Rush. This is a new format. I'm not going to go too in-depth, but I'm going to give a brief overview. I have content planned later for explain it, just because it's such a new concept, but it's pretty fun, and I think it's my favorite game type to date. It's a very hard level stage, so it's a Lufenia, at least at the last. There's like intermediate missions, but they're pretty simple. If you've been doing Lufenia, you can do these previous missions. They follow the same rules, but what you're focused on is the very hard stage. You get rewards based on how many teams you can clear with. There's some hierarchy, but I'm not quite sure, so don't quote me. And it might be subject to change as well. That's right. I need to mention that some of this stuff is subject to change because they tweaked it a little after the first boss rush, and I have no guarantee that the first one will be the same in global. But I'm my explanation for this first one gives a general overview of the game type, and when I specify this first boss rush, just know again that it might change different from JP because they needed to tweak it a little bit. But let's get right into it. The top rewards for clearing in the least amount of teams. So for the first boss rush is 2, and then for the subsequent ones it was always 3. You get Lufenia armor mats for doing it with the max team. Second level is the burst token, I believe, and then third's nuggets. Fourth is cosmos materials, which is books. Yeah, like this could change in global regarding 2 teams for the first one and 3 for the second one. But yeah, let's keep going. You get 50 actions with 1 team. So think Final Fantasy VII and the final dungeon when you can swap your teams around. It's kind of like that. And this is actions, not turns. There's no turn count limitation in boss rush. You need to do it's the amount of actions you do. And these are things that would also tick down the Lufenia orb. So if you do a call, a C65, or something that doesn't contribute to the turn count, this will still tick the boss rush counter down. However, this does not include, just like Lufenia orbs, it doesn't include off-turn damage. Off-turn damage won't increase the orb. I mean, it won't tick down the orb, I should say. Summon phase, the boss rush counter doesn't move, and burst phase. After 50 actions, or, well, you can swap out early if you so choose, because you're in a tight spot. You can swap to a new team. You can restart waves at will. You can also hit the rewind button to go back to the point where you switched your party to try again from that point. You cannot reuse anyone in your first party in parties afterwards, and so on and so forth. Calls can be reused though, even if the character is locked or the call was used in a previous team. Summons, however, are locked. So if you bring Ifrit on your first team, you can't bring Ifrit on your second team. You can still only use 1 burst per team, but you can bring multiple bursts in each group, and you can use 1 burst per group. It's a different style of play. You do raw burst damage. All you care about is blowing the enemy up as fast as possible. You don't care about skill efficiency. You're probably not. There's no need to pace yourself. Spam your LDs and need be. Get everything out the way. You want your teams to go as far as possible so you have leeway near the end. Off-turn damage is king since it doesn't count as an action. This is counters, traps, HP poisons. All of them are stellar in boss rush because it doesn't take an action. Damage per action is really what you really want to aim for in boss rush. While burst is not required, and there's always been someone running a boss rush where they haven't used burst. It's always possible. Don't fearmonger about that either. You don't need burst. The reason why people in JP, including me, use burst and boss rush is because we have it. It gives us more leeway in the later teams. I don't see why this is hard to comprehend. I love using burst and boss rush, so I don't have to be tight at the end. But you can definitely do it, and people in global will do it. Always. Always, always, always. There's 3 to 4 waves with different mechanics in different orbs and bosses, so you need to be well-rounded. It's usually based around the units that arrived earlier in the month, plus the featured unit. So, like for example, there's launch orbs and dark orbs in this one for Dark Knight Cecil. And there's a synergy mechanic. Now, this started with Boss Rush 3, and this is really the biggest subject to change thing. But where if you bring a synergy character, it gives the entire party synergy stats. And this is similar to how Dimensions and Transcendence is going to work. So say, since Firion synergy, and you brought Firion on your first team, and your other party members are Gladio and Gao, then Gladio and Gao would also get synergy stats. However, if you brought Gladio, Gao, and Rude, there's no synergy member in the party, so none of them would get synergy stats. It's one party synergy member gives everyone synergy stats. Otherwise, it's a bust. So you're really incentivized to bring synergy to get the most out of your units. This could potentially come to global early. It could not. We're waiting to see. I can't guarantee it won't, but I can't guarantee it will either. So stay tuned. If it is, it's a nice boost to make it easier. If not, well, people still have synergy. And the synergy on this first boss rush will be Firion, Exdeath, Dark Knight Cecil, and then the rest of Dark Knight Cecil's banner mates, which are Leon and Kain. So you want to bring an optimal team to maximize your damage output. You want to bring an orb counter to stay alive, unless there is no orb. Usually there's one wave without an orb, but there's like a hidden condition. You want to bring a synergy unit for the stats if possible. If you have a burst, it's good to bring one if you can fit them into your slots and you covered all the roles, just because that's an extra damage phase to give you more breathing room. And fill in any gaps after that. Again, off-turn damage is a good idea, because you don't have to act, but it'll destroy the bosses. Very different style of play, but I really like it. Now for the actual first boss rush breakdown. There's 2 teams for max rewards, and again, this is assuming that it stays the exact same as JP. If it changes, well, I warned you earlier. Let's see. Everything is paralyzed immune. Wave 1 is a prominence. Tier 1, Dimensions End flashbacks. There's no orb, but it is a damage race. It has massive defense spikes, and you don't want it to get into stage 4. It'll just wipe you. Blow this thing up as fast as possible. Give it a few turns. Deal off-turn damage. The ads are super aggressive with HP attacks, so if you're not ready, they might blow you up and catch you off guard. Focus the main one down. Lightning's good here for just delaying the main guy, but if you want to go the counter route, that works as well, and battery through it, because the defense is really just ridiculous. This thing is tanky. Wave 2 is the Vain Horse. It is a launch orb that thankfully it activates at 50% health, so if you have enough time from the team in the first wave, you can rush them down with the first team, get them to 50%, and then swap them out so you can get some launches in near the end just to satisfy the orb. Bring launch calls just in case. And then wave 3 is the Golbez Dragon. It had a funny name, but I forgot it. It does big brave gains, it cleanses, and if you let it get turns, it could potentially blow you up, but you can really cheese this if you have like Cloud, Kais, and Dark Cecil. That's the team I remember using, and I blew them up. Didn't get a single turn. Kais shows his worth around launchers, and this is really the perfect opportunity to do it. Dark Knight Cecil with his delays and then his crazy battery launch, it equals a lot of fun time with Kais, pretty much. You love to see it. Challenge, there's no challenge in Boss Rush because you get burst tokens if you get the max team rewards. As for my polls and future viability of Dark Knight Cecil, I'm going for him. I always enjoyed using him. He's very fun. Hopefully I can get Firion burst because I'm pulling on all 3 banners. The slight rework in LD make him even more risk reward, which again, I love that playstyle, and he's great for launch comps and other nonsense. Wow, how long have I been talking? Jesus. Okay, let's conclude now. I need to go do stuff. This is the month before our anniversary and LD boards. This was the COVID period in JP, so doing this month without any delays in content is going to be very nice. My poll plans, again, are Cloud, Burst, Pity on site. Firion, I'm not chasing the Burst, but it would be nice to have. I'm pulling on all 3 of his banners, so odds are I'll probably get it, but no guarantees. Exdeath, haven't used them before. I think it looks like fun. Let's see what happens there. And then Dark Knight Cecil, because I generally enjoy his playstyle. I'm most excited for the Boss Rush. It's my favorite game mode. I always enjoy that type of content. Seeing if they tweak it in global, that'd be even more fun. And Exdeath, since I never used him. And that's it. This video ran really long. Wow. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video around. Drop a comment about your plans. I will be interacting with everything. Do not hesitate to ask questions. And have a good one. Peace.